This is Gigabyte's new 360Hz 1440p QD OLED gaming monitor, and this might very well be the display to pick up right now. Now, I've reviewed a lot of monitors this year already, and while each of those might have had a couple shortcomings, as far as 1440p high refresh monitors go, I'll go ahead and spoil the rest of this video and let you know this might quite actually be perfect. For me particularly, I've been using this monitor for about 2 weeks now as my go-to for all PC gaming, console gaming on my PlayStation 5, creative work with my M2 MacBook Air, and whenever time allows a little bit of content consumption. This monitor was perfect timing as well, since I just set up this desk in my bedroom since I did bring home my son from the hospital this week, so for as long as Gigabyte lets me borrow this monitor, this will be my main go-to right here in my bedroom setup. I'm also not particularly a spec lord like a lot of other channels, so don't expect charts, graphs, and measurements and all that stuff. For myself, this really just comes down to the real day-to-day experience as a tired gamer dad who really digs tech. Now, for all my OLED enthusiasts, you will be happy to know this display does have a QD OLED panel with that glorious glossy finish. And while I'm personally neither here nor there when it comes down to glossy versus matte coatings, it's really easy to appreciate how good this monitor looks. For this room particularly though, the monitor is back to window, so I don't really need to worry about harsh reflections, so this works out perfectly for me. As with lots of OLED panels, you're going to be getting perfect real blacks and insanely punchy colors. For me, OLED has become my preferred panel simply due to how the image looks, and this really does impress. From the phone in my pocket to my living room TV, and of course my gaming monitor, I really do love OLED panels. From an image standpoint, again, everything looks great and the viewing angles remain incredible wherever you are. Coming in with a 27-inch display at a 1440p resolution, this panel size is near the sweet spot for me, especially for competitive gaming. Not to mention the 360Hz refresh rate makes this practically one of the best options available if you're looking to dunk on children in FPS games. A 360Hz 1440p OLED with a 0.03 millisecond response time really will give you one of the best possible competitive gaming experiences, plain and simple. During gameplay, there's been zero tearing, artifacts, or noticeable ghosting. I will mention as well this does have AMD FreeSync cited on the spec sheet, but no NVIDIA G-Sync, just something to be aware of. That said, I did test out both my 2070 rig and my 4090, and neither GPU had any issues when it came down to frame sync. And well, in this case, my RTX 4090 hard locked at 360 FPS at 1440p without issue, and of course that 2070 I mentioned did give me floating FPSs between 150 and 300, all without any sort of noticeable issues or skipped frames. And for those of you who really are sweatlords when it comes down to competitive gaming, you can always swap this from 27 to 24 inches at 1080p with just a single press of this tactical switch. Since I still do use this RTX 2070 setup, there's definitely a noticeable difference when it comes down to both hardware performance as well as my competitive performance. This feature for me specifically is easily one of the best features on this monitor. Still, whenever I'm not doing any sorts of competitive gaming, just about everything else looks great on here. And well, I'm actually pretty pumped for Diablo 4's next season, which I heard is a pretty good overhaul. For me at least, high refresh isn't just for competitive gaming, but really any game can benefit from it hugely. I will touch on ports shortly, but I can easily say this monitor also pairs pretty well with both the latest gen Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 since it does have two HDMI 2.1 ports. With that, you will be getting full VRR and LLM support. VRR will uncap the frame rates from 30, 60, or 120 FPS to anywhere between 48 to 120 FPS. So any games that might typically lock to 60 FPS might work up to 120 FPS if supported. Likewise, ALLM or auto low latency mode gives you that near instant response time for gaming. And sure, the PlayStation 5 does only go up to 120 Hz, so you won't make full use out of the 360 on this monitor, but you're definitely going to be future-proof for any sort of next-gen consoles and of course gaming PCs. Straight up, for me, this last week I've been on console so much more than PC, being a tired dad and all, so I do really want to mention the dual 5-watt speakers on here are actually pretty decent for whenever you don't have a headset. Being completely honest, they're good enough, and I haven't really had to bother setting up external speakers or anything else. For all music, content, and non-FPS gaming, I've been using these speakers, and for all my FPS games specifically, I've been leaning into my PlayStation Pulse earbuds. Jumping into just about any game looks insane. Likewise, the HDR performance here is actually good and it's hard not to appreciate. As someone who doesn't really care to calibrate displays or measure peak brightnesses and stuff, it sorta just sounds like a trust me bro moment, but to me everything here does look badass. Playing Call of Duty on here has been a great time as always, and I've been slowly working my way through getting my platinum in Hogwarts Legacy still. It's simply such a chill ass game. Right now at least, this setup hits a little bit more special since I am really tied up with my newborn and all, and something simple like being able to turn my monitor arm over like this and still be able to game is definitely a good time. If you're looking to dive heavy into the specific gaming menus as well, this is by far the most robust I've seen. It has positional timers counting up and down, crosshairs, black levels, and something I haven't really seen before is this eagle eye feature. I imagine this would be pretty sweet though if you are playing a scoped playstyle. I haven't really cared to tinker with it, but there is a system dashboard here which I imagine might need software to connect. Still, it's great to have it if you need it. And of course, outside of gaming, this display is straight up supreme for any sorts of media and content right out of box. Again, I don't really calibrate my displays ever, it's just not something I care to do, plus loads of other smarter people can probably talk about it a little bit better than me anyways. For myself though, from an experience standpoint, content looks as good as I'd want it to, and I really can't complain. The spec spec sheet does read peak brightness at 100 nits for HDR content, and this monitor has loads of options when it comes down to image customization. There are some pre-made profiles if you are interested, or you can use 6 color adjustments to make your image as perfect as you'd want it. And I know some people might be worried about raised blacks on a QD OLED panel, but I haven't really found this to be an issue whatsoever. So yeah, unless you're really trying to calibrate your displays to match other types of OLEDs, I wouldn't really worry about this. And again, when it comes down to media consumption, I do want to give another mention to those built-in speakers, which are more than adequate. Not that a YouTube video will really do it much justice, but here is a quick sound test. Outside of that, of course, due to the built-in KVM switch, I've actually been swapping everything between my M2 MacBook Air and my PC rig. I know you can always buy a dock separately and all that, but having one built right into the monitor really is my favorite solution for productivity and minimal desk setups. It just makes this monitor a great all-in-one solution for setups like mine. For my setup, I've got my Logitech gaming mouse and NuFi Air 60 dongles and the 2 USB-A ports, and I can swap them between my PC and Mac whenever I want, just using this single KVM switch. Having used this over the last 2 weeks for creative and accounting work, it's done an exceptional job, and I will be sad to part ways with this monitor when I gotta send it back to Gigabyte. For editing videos, it's been great when it comes down to color coverage at 99% of the DCI-P3 color gamut, and it gets plenty bright without issue. Likewise, text looks plenty sharp on here without any sort of noticeable fringing you'd find on some older OLED panels. Here's a couple text examples, but I don't think this will really be an issue for anybody. Now again, this is just my setup, but this monitor is ports galore with its DisplayPort 1.4, which I use on my PC. You've got the 2 HDMI 2.1 ports, which I am using one for my PlayStation 5, but I think I will be adding my Xbox Series X potentially for the second port. You've got that Type-C port, which has both display signal and 18-watt power delivery, and this goes to my mentioned M2 MacBook Air. This has particularly been useful not just for my laptop, but for charging all sorts of things like my earbuds, keyboards, and even my camera. There's also a microphone and headphone jack here that I won't be using in this setup, mainly because I want to keep things more minimal, but it is there if you do need it. Now, whether you're using this for productivity or gaming, you might be worried about burn-in since this is an OLED panel. You're pretty well covered for preventing burn-in with the built-in OLED care options outside of the 3-year warranty, which specifically covers burn-in as well. In this menu, however, you've got the pixel scrubbing feature, which you can activate whenever you want or have that delayed, and you've also got pixel shifting, which does bump around your image so the pixels aren't retaining the same image non-stop. There is also corner dimming, which is great for mini-maps or static game elements, as well as logo dimming. Outside of that, it's easy to say this monitor is exceptionally well built. For me, I particularly dig the minimal look on the front end, which has pretty thin bezels and only a minor Aorus branding on the chin. Opposite the front, the rear side does have a little bit more of a gamer look with some RGB elements and some gamer-like features. Now, I don't particularly like blade-style monitor stands, so I'm just using this cheapo Vivo arm from Amazon, which does give me all the adjustments I need. Still, the stand does give you everything you might want, from full tilt, pivot, height, and even 90-degree rotation if you need it. Likewise, there is a channel here for any sort of cable you might want, which is also adjustable. Overall, this monitor is built super well, and if I have to think about what's missing, honestly, nothing. Nothing particularly sticks out to me, which is legitimately rare. If I really had to nitpick, there's only 2 things I can really think of, and that's having a non-blade style stand, which again is just my personal preference, and maybe some higher watt speakers. With that, who's this monitor for? Straight up, a lot more people than I originally thought going in. PC gamers are absolutely covered because you're going to be having that 360Hz refresh rate at 1440p, which is awesome. 1440p is also still the sweet spot for most people who either can't run 4K or just rather have 1440p at a higher refresh rate like 360 versus those new 4Ks at 240Hz. Likewise, it's for somebody like me who simply loves throwing down games but truly needs it for other purposes like work or creation. Overall, this monitor definitely exceeded my expectations, and I'm sad to be sending this back to Gigabyte. Either way, I will have a link down below in the video description if you do want to check this out. If you do have any questions, be sure to let me know. I'll be sure to answer as many as I can. I appreciate you watching till the end. Till next time.